Ed, can you just click that X so it'll go away?
What else is doing?
Yeah.
Just get rid of the okay,
Just hit okay,
okay.
thank you.
No problem.
Hey, so. The appointed time, good afternoon to the May 20th Roads and Right of Way Committee meeting. This meeting is an open meeting being conducted both in person and via Zoom. Please note that it is being recorded and be available for viewing on the town's YouTube channel at a further date. At this point, we don't have anybody on Zoom joining us member-wise. When that happens, if that happens, we will conduct all roll calls, motions and votes, but with an attendance, roll call attendance. But since we don't have that right now, we don't have to worry about it. Okay. So, that being said, we can jump right into the meeting. We will recognize that we have not two guests, but two attendees. Tracy McDonald and ever welcome Bob from the real estate specialist folks for the town. So thank you for joining us. First order of business is to accept the April 15th, 2025 minutes.
Motion to approve.
So motion by Alan, seconded by Snooki. Any comments, corrections, objections? Okay, great. That being said, all in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous? Public comment items not in the agenda. We don't everybody from the public. Rick, you got something?
Well, just as long as we did the minutes, I didn't know if we had more volunteers to help with the minutes, kind of on a monthly basis. So that, I know we've sort of talked about that before. And I'm checking in with the chair and see if he has more volunteers coming along to help out, or
The list
is the
is,
burden with him right now?
the list is staggering.
I think that means you don't have any volunteers. Well, I'll just say I'm disappointed. I mean, I gave it my all 1 month, thank you all very much. And if we don't share the burden, I think that's unfair of all of us on the chair. So I'm just making an observation.
Well, since you brought it up, it's a point that's going to have to be reckoned with after the next meeting. The next meeting is my last meeting, and I'm currently using the AI chat process, which it gets recorded, and then the town posting coordinator is the one that can go in and retrieve it. I can't go get the summary, and then.
It takes a little cleanup, okay?
So,
They're very good, but not complete.
And that was only good, that only works with the Zoom session. So if it's strictly in person, there won't be any recordings at all. So, you got 1 more month to try to figure out how to deal with it, and after that, all bets are off.
Just as a comment, I was reviewing the minutes going back for several years, quite a few years actually, of this committee, or yeah. And I was really impressed with how important the minutes are in terms of the things that we covered. And we'll talk about this later in the agenda. I just want to emphasize how important the record is of the things that we propose, the things that we accomplish, the things we are still working on. All of these things are, the minutes are the historical record of what we have done, what we have accomplished over the years. And so anyway, I just want to emphasize how important I think that the minutes are.
Alan, I joined
when Deanne was sitting here with
I
her
know.
computer, faithfully taking everything down.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, we're lucky to have Lee all these years.
Yes, indeed.
So,
I,
We deserve a well round of applause for that. So anyway, I just thought it was worth bringing up so we don't forget. There's sort of a committee responsibility here, not just on one person. So
right, exactly.
All right, so first item on the agenda to deal with is Ed just brought it up for wanted to have a bit of discussion, and that's the Sheep Pond Access Road. That
Well, I did bring it up, and I guess it was reviewed by the town very recently at one of the select board meetings. And I just wanted to, I wasn't sure how it would affect any of the potential access to the water, and so I just brought it up as something to keep on our radar, I guess, more than anything else. And you might have a lot to say about this.
I have a lot to say about it,
Right.
since I did the presentation at the
Right.
select
I
board.
thought so.
So I'm sure I can answer everybody's questions pretty thoroughly. There is no public beach in Sheep Pond.
That's what I thought. yeah.
They all own to the high, whatever, low mean water mark, whatever you
Mm.
want to call it. The existing Sheep Pond Road, which is eroded, it was a public road, is a public road currently, failing. The new proposed road, which is an easement granted by Nantucket Conservation Foundation based on a trade that the town made, will be a private road. It will be maintained by all the homeowners there. They are getting a betterment for it. And we're currently working through the permitting process, and then it will click along, but we anticipate the road will be constructed, be very remedial. It's gonna be some brush cutting, clearing. It's not gonna be invasive paved it's gonna be very low impact at the request of NCF.
I think the arbiter of success will be the fire chief.
Yeah. Yeah, and these have all kind of gone through some of those channels. And so it's been a part of a long process over 5 years. With houses going in between, and so this is hopefully getting close to the finish line, but yeah, there is no beach access there.
Through the chair to Tracy. I was wondering has there been any outreach to any of the owners who have lost, their property now is underwater and, whatever, to see if we could create some public access under there? Or is that not even on anyone's kind of radar, as far as
Not
being wanted
currently.
at all?
One of the properties that's sort of like on the edge is in foreclosure.
Right, just sold it.
And the Giffords, who owned the one that went in, I think last December, they actually have another property up at Head of Plains. So they have been involved. They're part of the temporary easement we have. They were grantors in that. And but no discussion there with them either. I mean, I can think about that. I'll have to look at it more
It's a long
closely.
stretch of waterfront, that's what I'm saying, and as things erode and change and accrete in different places, it might be nice for the future to have some sort of
I guess,
access somewhere in there.
sorry, I guess that just in thinking about it, the road will then not be public. So the road to the beach won't be public, it will be private.
So that would be, so that's a
If
major
I
part of the
had
road.
to guess private sentiment, the owners would be against that.
Right, probably. Is the entire road gonna be private, or is it gonna have some public-private sections? And the entire thing is gonna become the entire new thing, not the old road, part of the road, right?
It's gonna be private.
The whole thing is, okay, all right,
Right.
that's where I was going with this, yeah, okay.
Private road springs another question. We have 25 local area associations. 22 or 23 of which are comprised to deal with the roads in their subdivisions. Are there enough houses there for those of us in the Civic League to encourage them to incorporate as an association?
So let's classify this a little bit differently. Those people, somebody owns the fee in those roads. So when you have a homeowners association and you have a private subdivision neighborhood, they all have the fee in the road in some beneficial interest.
Yeah.
This is an easement from Nantucket Conservation Foundation to
So
these
the
private
owner is still a
residents.
conservation foundation. Okay,
What about the property that the foundation owns along the Sheep Pond Road that's in the erosion zone itself? I mean, for access to the members of the Conservation Foundation.
That would be a conversation with them.
Okay, I was just wondering if that was.
so for this cluster of homeowners to want to join the Civic League, it's because they have a nice companionable feeling about being part of a club, and it would not be for the maintenance of the road.
Right, you know, it's, like I said, it's been a long road, so to speak, in pulling this together. But this is the deal now, and we just want to get it through the permitting and get it over the finish line. And when I presented it on Wednesday, there are 11 homeowners.
So you'll still be able to access the section of road that still exists. There are two sections. There's the section in the middle that got wiped out. But you used to be able to drive all the way along the, you know, to the.
So the barriers have moved a couple times, Alan, and so there are like, you know, big cement barriers there now for safety. We have had some brief conversations about where those will ultimately be located, but then as soon as this private road is in, the maintenance is up, the maintenance and all of that is up to them. So it will continue probably to erode, and those barriers will eventually, it'll go to those. I don't know, we haven't reached, we're just trying to get through this part to reach the final step.
It's up there now.
Right, so like sort of where that blue circle is, I think a little bit further down is where the barriers are now.
Actually, yeah.
And then there's barriers on the opposite end as well. Where it's really significantly eroded in those, like sort of those two locations. So the plan is to have this in advance of sort of, you know, nor'easter sort of season. And then hope, you know, that holds, but you can see like where it makes the elbow there. Is why it needs to go in sooner rather than later.
Well, yeah.
So that's.
Any other question?
Really,
Rick?
I'm sort of curious about the existing right of way, whether it's a road or passable. It's it was, and
it's currently.
presumably it's still a public road. And if part of this process is not formally discontinuing it, I haven't heard that yet. I would assume it's open to the public to walk, for example.
Yeah.
And it's not prohibited to walk through there.
Yeah.
Okay, and that gets closer to the access issue. It's not the access because but eventually the beach might erode up to that public way. And we will have a public access to a 3-foot wide position, which is not unlike some of the accesses on Squam Road. They go down to private property and they're 3 feet wide, and people go to the beach and they just distribute themselves anyway. That's just the way it is. So that's one question. So that's good to know about that. The other question was, some roads, that are private, provide access from one place to another. And people are allowed to travel, like Squam or other roads in the island. And this is a little different, but not totally different. People used to be able to travel from, Madigan, was it the road, could you be able to come down, go around, come out the other end, go across that bridge down there. And even if it's private, that can be construed perhaps as a way that the public can travel on the road. And I'm not sure whether that's come up when we say private. Does that mean that they've already talked about putting up a gate? Or is the public gonna just be allowed to travel as they do on many other roads on the island?
So again, the easement is between Nantucket Conservation Foundation and these homeowners, and any kind of type of thing like that would be between them. In my discussions, I haven't been a part of any of that, but they've dealt very directly with between each attorneys, for all the different people. They've all dealt directly in terms of negotiating the easement.
So anything like a bridge, I'm not sure whether it's a good idea or not, but I know that when you read the abandoned fee stuff that we got a packet from Andrew Vorse once with 5,800 pages. There are lots of cases, and I don't think anybody's likely to make an issue here, but they could.
There's a betterment involved too.
Rick, as I understand, traditional common law, if not defined, the owner owns to the midpoint of a private way. And the neighbor owns in the other direction. Some of our private ways, the deeds write to the boundary of the private way, in which case we don't know who owns the private way, possibly the town, possibly anybody else. But what I hear from Tracy is ownership is clear. If the Conservation Foundation, which I don't think they would do, were to post it as no trespassing, it's contrary to their attitude. But the Conservation Foundation may well welcome walkers, but it'd be up to them.
Yeah, I do understand it, but there are a lot of cases where the public has had access over a way to get from one place to another. And those, and I'm not proposing that's true, but it's not always clear that what you're saying is the ultimate answer.
Yeah,
If there's somebody else along the way, which is not the case here, who has a parcel at either end of this road, they probably will have continued access rights no matter what, but I don't know that. I was just curious if it had come up, and I think Tracy said to her knowledge, it has not come up yet. So
I think,
thank you.
the deeper conversation would be with the Conservation Foundation, not with the town. This is something, we are negotiating a reroute of the roadway for emergency access and otherwise for these people. Other than that, it's going to be private and, I don't know what their intentions are.
Just out of curiosity, the Conservation Foundation, of course, their properties are open to the public. It's part of being, conservation rule. And so if they are the owner of the way, wouldn't that give them the foundation, some say in who has the ability to access that way?
sure.
I mean,
Might have to do with their easement agreement.
yeah, I wouldn't want to like speak to anybody's rights or not rights in
No.
terms of that. I think, like I said, this has been a long negotiation process and, with each year, it becoming more and more crucial.
Yeah.
So I don't, the extenuating type of circumstances,
Exactly.
I don't think we've gotten into. I think we're just trying to isolate the purpose and stick to that.
See what happens, I think, yeah. For years, I spent 32 years as the ranger for the Conservation Foundation. And I would drive that road regularly, to get from one property to the next and so on to the conservation groups. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. Depends somewhat on the neighbors. I think most of them are actively, well, the majority of them are just, some are.
It's got implications for other parts of the island that are receding.
Right. It does.
Exactly.
It also loops up with some, when you go down Red Barn Road and all that, some of the ways that come across land bank land too. So it's kind of an interesting kind of, you're talking about that circle again. It looks, since you're going further on the, I guess, north or east, I would say east. Yeah, you might link up with some of those traveled ways and go across land bank land as well, it looks like. So I don't know. It'd be an interesting way here. That's why I was just wondering whether there would be any access to it there.
Okay,
We gotta get it done though.
My own sense, it's been a long process, and I think we wanna thank Tracy for bringing it to this
Exactly,
hopefully
yeah.
conclusion. So I don't think we're trying to interfere with any of that.
No, I
Yeah, but I think
understand
there
that.
are interesting questions, so that's.
Yeah, I think we have to finish it first.
Well, that's the thing, I've wondered, I go out that way fairly often. And I wonder what the Conservation Foundation is going to do in terms of allowing passage on the road on their property.
thank you for bringing that. One down, 7,000 more of those.
Don't worry, we're working on it.
So, but you better get Bob some vitamins if he's gonna be hanging in.
Well, this is sentimental for you.
Yeah, that's
You want
true.
to add more.
All right, Ed, so thank you for bringing that up. Next order of business is a review of our mission statement. This was asked to be put on by Alan. And
I do happen to have a copy of the mission statement here.
and I happen to have it, so I'm gonna put it up on the screen.
Right, it is on our website. I was, when I went in to look for it, because I didn't have a written copy of it. But the mission is pretty clear. I think, if you don't have it, it's short, so I'll
It's,
just,
it's right there on the screen.
oh, good, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I'm just angry enough with the Department of Government Efficiency to share the fact that I was fired from my role of in the health and safety of minors. But I haven't forgotten my interest in safety. So the prelude was just out of anger. But the premise is that we might find a way to semantically insert some notion of safe access.
Safe.
We might be now.
We don't want people falling off the bluff because they feel they have access to the beach.
Well,
We might be entering a field of.
well, so for me, my 2 cents, I'll give 4 cents and I get by chair's prerogative, I'll give my 4 cents worth. The key to me is the notation in there, Board of Selectmen, County Commissioners. And so, it's our understanding, and it's the precedent has been set that this committee works at the pleasure of the select board. I wasn't around in the 1800s when this was set up, so I'm unsure whether the mission statement was a combination of efforts from the selectmen at the time and the original committee members or what. So I'm unsure, I guess it was something we'd have to check out, but if that mission statement were to change. It may very well have to be tweaked, with the select boards.
I can,
So, let me pull this down so that nothing boggles me more than when somebody's talking and you can't see who it is. Go ahead. Alan, you,
yeah,
as a long-standing member.
the mission statement was drafted by the Roads and Right of Way Committee. And it was approved by the select board. At the time, this was,
What was the
It
time?
was within my
20
memory.
So
It was within my time on the committee, Alan.
yeah, I know, it was within.
what was the time? That's what my question was gonna be.
Yeah, it was on
When
my
was his-
time too.
When
I
was
mean,
his time?
I was part of the authorship of this.
Gotcha.
And we did take it to Libby to get it approved. Libby, who was the town manager at the time. And then we took it to the select board and they checked it off and, okay, because for the reason I was chairman at the time of the Roads and Right of Way Committee, and we wanted to be sure that what our authority was, and it's pretty clear here that we review issues and so on, dealing with that, but we are a part of the town. We are subject to, the whims, or not the whim, but to the direction of the
Watch your
select board. Now, we also followed that up with a vision statement, which gives a little more detail as far as what the vision of the Roads and Way Committee, again, when this was drafted was, and I believe it was back in 2009 or something.
Was that when the committee was actually,
The committee is much longer standing
well,
than.
that's what I thought. So I was wondering, when did the committee actually start? Does anyone know?
Hang on a second, chat for a minute, I'll put the vision statement up, as long as I can do a cut and paste.
Ed, I'm gonna turn to this fountain of knowledge to my left. But I remember him telling me there used to be two committees and they were consolidated.
Oh,
Yeah, that was, there was the right of way committee, and then there was another committee that dealt with the roads. So
so there, yeah.
we combined them. We became the Roads and Right of Way Committee. And again, the intention was that we were an advisory committee to the select board. And either the select board through the town manager would maybe, if there was an issue, they would let us know, or we would very often bring issues to the select board. And there were a number of things that we did under this mission and our vision statements. I have a list of things that we accomplished over that time, and these are all these records are on our website. I hadn't looked at our website, by the way, for a while. So I'd gone through this and I said, holy cow, we did all this. But there were three or four big projects that we took on. One was the Public Way Monuments Project. And there was a whole write-up. There's a proposal, again, it's on our website, that we presented to the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board, as far as the marking the public ways. So as a result of that, we took it to the Select Board. They said, amen, go for it. And the public way monuments had been started back in the probably the 60s into the 70s and so on. So we picked up on that. And one of the things that we as a committee did, we installed, well, we had made and installed these the granite public way monuments. And there were a total of, I believe, 45 of them that we actually put in the ground, and they're photographs, by the way, of Lee and I and some of the other members of the committee.
Joe Marklinger and Frank Holgate.
Yeah, exactly. Putting these monuments in the ground. we'd be out there, we'd dig the hole, we first of all had to make sure we were in the right place, make sure we weren't on private property, but on town property. Dug the hole, we hauled those monuments who weigh about 400 pounds over there, set them in place, and so all those many of those monuments, so anyway, that was one of the projects that we undertook. Another project was a plan for improvement of public rights of way. And this again was presented by the Roads and Right of Way Committee to the Board of Selectmen and the County Commissioners. And it was a proposal from our committee as to public access, rights of way, and it's a very, when I read through this, I said, oh my gosh, I had forgotten a lot of this, but it's a very complete proposal as far as the town's responsibility for public rights of way and access throughout the county. There are a number of other projects that we also engaged in. We had HDC certificate of appropriateness. That was one of the things that we dealt with as far as the ways and so on. We had street names and parcels and coordinates and all that sort of thing. We did a rededication of the Founders Burial Ground. At the time, there was no legal access to the Founders Burial Ground. And when the committee heard about it, when I heard about it and said, what do you mean there's no public access? This is the Founders Burial, yeah. So anyway, our committee was instrumental in negotiating with the Anglers Club to get access to the Founders Burial Ground. As an offshoot of that project, the Women's Monument that's up there, this was again a project of the Roads and Right of Way Committee. After we gained access, we also got the town involved with the maintenance of the cemetery. And while we were up there, I suggested to who's this? What's her name? The long-term town manager, or
I think Catherine Stowe
Catherine
was
Stowe.
very much involved in the fundraising for the
exactly.
women's dedication ceremony.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, town clerk. Yeah, so she was the one, when our committee mentioned this to her, she said, oh, it's a great idea. And of course, people have talked about this for a while because you have the one monument with the men that was put up in the 1880s with, the Macy family reunion and all that sort of thing. So we're the ones who proposed the women's monument, and we proposed it. We wanted the same shape, size as the men's monument. The wives of these, the founders are listed there with their dates as well. And there's a nice little saying at the bottom of each one of them. Anyway, it's
Over 80 children. from,
Yes.
I think 10 or 11 women.
yeah, exactly. As opposed to the one on the men's side, it says these forefathers were brought forth and blah, blah.
So Alan, if you could email me that list, I'm assuming a soft copy of that list. If you could email that to me, I'll make sure that we've added to the minutes for today. So it'll be the current, when it talks about the review of it,
Right.
people will be able to see that document.
Alan, if I may add to your very complete list, the discussion of ex officio actually touches on this committee, because for a while we had the director of planning ex officio,
Mhm.
the transportation manager ex officio, and the director of the DPW ex officio.
Right.
And they quite regularly came. And every so often, Andrew Vorse would say, we're thinking about taking a paper road, but we just want to check with you whether or not there's a walkway through there. Because I think there is. And, you know, where there was no walkway and there was no issue, it was not a problem. So very often, that, and then that led into a combination with Mike Burns about the proposed repaving, rerouting, and sidewalking of Pleasant Street, Prospect Street, and so forth. Some of which might come to pass this fall. I think we're paying for some of that, but he would review those plans with us and we'd discuss. In terms of transportation, we regularly looked at the submission for the Transportation Improvement Plan, TIP. And I'm trying to remember what we got from DPW. Road ownership, there was a question on Wynn Street. The public way is unpaved, the private way is paved, but there was a proposal to run infrastructure there. And we were getting that, as well as a review of the encroachment policy,
Exactly.
which belongs to the DPW. So the discussion about where this committee might go might learn a little bit from the past, in that if we could incorporate some of these people and their what's the word I want? Their guiding committee. For example, Mike has traffic safety. In either an informal or formal way, we might get more things to talk about.
Yes. Get things done.
Among other things that we cover, the encroachment policy. We were the ones who actually drafted that. We took it to, we got it approved by the select board and so on. That
It
was,
chopped up a bit by council, but that's okay.
yeah, well, but it was really Joe Marklinger who did the basic draft of that with input from the whole commission or committee, I'm sorry. The Sconset Beach Preservation, this goes way back to when they, before all the modern stuff was in there. We were involved in that. We took, we're
And
active.
that report, I think, might still be on the website.
Yeah. The priority takings list, we used to do a priority takings list where we would go over and members of the committee would say, hey, is this a public or a private way, or what? And if we found that it was a private way, we talked about that and brought it again to the select board, because again, we have no authority. We don't make the rules here. What we do have is the ear supposedly of the select board. And all of our proposals, all of these things on our list here, Steps Beach, for example, Indian Avenue, that was another thing. The town had built those stairs years ago, but the question was, are they public or private? Because all of a sudden the people at the top of the stairs, wanted to interfere with people using their, going down on the beach and so on. That was a pretty major project that took us several years to get the select board to finally take that and to claim that because they had built it after all and so on. So anyway, there are a number of things like that. And it seems as though if we're talking about what our mission is or what our purpose is, mission is the word, I'm not so sure. I don't feel comfortable with mission. It's kind of military, but I see it as our purpose. What do we do? What's our goal? Why? What's that sort of thing.
So I'll just add one more thing. I'll preface it with something almost irrelevant. But the word engineer is a cognate to ingenious. And so as an engineer, I go totally vocational. And the committee did a lot of work in identifying the layout and routes of the Nantucket Railroad.
Yes, exactly. That's another thing.
And that still is an open issue It's getting better. The land bank did something in their little pocket park.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the steamship authority at least hang a sign on the waiting area for the fast boat, because that's about where the depot was.
Right.
And if you look at the layout of the wharf, the reason for the rounded entry to the catboat basin, so the train could get through there.
Mention that to Nat Lowell the next time about getting a sign down there. He's on the steamship authority.
Rob Ranny is on the steamship authority, and that's port council member. But yes, I will.
It's the property on Easy Street is where the sign
There's
is.
people waiting for the
Down there.
train.
And the land bank also owns now the old right of way going from Surfside Road all the way out to the beach. There's a trail on it. And anyway, there you go. So,
As a walk, it's not the most interesting because it's the
Well-
plain, well, it's what we're going, moors, it's the middle moors.
Very
And it's
plain.
relatively flat and the
I added
vegetation is
your,
not changeable, but historically, it's significant.
it is.
I added the mission statement on there, Alan, if you wanted to just. So it's
Oh,
up
the
on the screen
vision.
now. Not the vision statement.
Right.
Sure.
So I think if you would like a response, I think, as staff, what we could do is I think between Bob and I, we can identify a few things that I think probably we could engage you in that go back to sort of your original purpose.
Right.
Um,
That would be great.
I do have, still this vast list of yard sale parcels in progress, so to speak, where there is going to be the one big beach and the public access and things like that. And we have an intern for the summer, and we are pulling together our list of what has been previously conveyed through the yard sale program with the benefit of the one big beach. And we could probably pull together a list of all those locations where we do actually have one big beach. The one big beach easements are interesting when you read them. They're not all full access. Majority of the time they do involve some type of pedestrian access, but then a lot of times they're not full beach access. In other words, you can cross over, but you can't actually, hang out there. But I think where the committee could add value is analyzing each one of those one big beaches and creating like a summary of the location with what the actual easement rights are, so that the public does know, okay, I'm going in this section and I can't hang out, or I can take a left and walk over here.
We worked with Nat Porter to identify on the town's GIS to have a layer for access.
Right.
And we could certainly expand on that.
Yeah, so I think that would be kind of a large project over time that you could work on. I do have some things in the pipeline that I'm working on that are access type things that just in working through my regular real estate stuff has come up, and then I'm said, well, I want this. So those will be coming along as well. So I think that is a way that you could sort of go back to your original purpose and add some value. The encroachment policy, Bob and I have been talking about this. We do believe it does need some amendment, based on, the struggles that we've had on enforcement. And so I have some thoughts about that. Obviously everything we do has to be vetted through legal, but we could make that a separate meeting where we could identify what we think needs to change. And then maybe you guys can weigh in on whether you agree or disagree, and we can come to some consensus on getting through some amendments on that. It is right now, enforcement is by DPW. So when we submit a work order and they go trim hedges or whatever they're gonna do, that goes through them, but the actual correspondence comes through Bob and I.
Okay, that's good to know.
Okay,
So we take a look at it, we look at the title, we, we kind of reach out to the homeowner, you know, we engage and with the conversation of, you know, remediation or a license or whatever the case is gonna be. But there does need to be an end game.
You know,
So,
your presence, you and now Bob, have really strengthened, I think, this part of the whole business about public access and so on. And one of the strengths of our committee has been that we have had people who are very much involved in with the island who've been around. We still do. I mean, Rick, Diane, and Deanne, and you know, over the years, we've had people who are very involved in the community. Like Nat Lowell was still on after all these years. So I think that's wonderful that we have now some real not backbone, but you know, some backup for all the
support, yeah.
projects.
Yeah, support.
Before the,
Cut through the other door is locked.
before
Sorry, Bob.
you and Bob took this on, was the DPW writing these letters themselves?
Yeah.
Supposedly, I thought so, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And that was why.
Yeah, so I've told this anecdote before. There's something in the policy that says it will be reviewed by the encroachment committee. And I asked your predecessor, Ken Bogran, I said, who's on the encroachment committee? He said, I think I am.
We are making some progress, you know, there are some locations that are fairly large and sort of systemic ones that have gone on for quite a while. We're gonna address those. But, and, you know, and then you have the day-to-day, you know, hedge and stakes and rocks, you know, those ones are, you know, a sidebar, but then there's some tricky ones. And so I think, you know, as we work through it and new ones come up or otherwise, it's definitely worth a revision to the policy.
So my comment earlier suddenly has a moment of reality here in Nantucket. Probably a high priority is sightlines having to do with vehicle safety, which just happens to be one of my strong interests.
Yeah.
And yes, I do understand cutting hedges, moving things around so that people can see people going the wrong way on my street, because there's no easy sight line if you're going the wrong way on New Street.
Yeah. So, you know, I think we can kind of try to work through this and if you think you need to revise your missions, I mean, you should change it to select board. You should at least make that one change in it. And you know, we can go from there and see if there's other things as Bob and I work through our list that, you know, I can think of a couple other things that I also think probably
That'd be great.
add in, you know, and we certainly can use the help. I can tell you that.
Okay, I tell you a problem we're gonna have a little bit, and this is a little bit of a sidebar, and I'm noticing this is because of the sewer project. There's been so many one-way roads, one way that have been converted to one-way roads, the other way are exit roads that I'm now watching people that. Now that that section's been supposedly complete, or a section of it's been complete, you know, to a stage. They're still going down the one-way ways. Because they've now gotten used to going down the detours. And if this goes much longer into the summer, we're gonna
I
have
spent half an
something's gonna
hour
happen.
yesterday trying to get home. Because I couldn't go down Pleasant Street, go to Orange Street, and lo and behold, National Grid was blocking Orange
Orange
Street.
Street for telephone.
And that might just take a little bit of coordination with our police.
Yeah,
Just a little bit more identification about what's your best way home.
Or just trying to get to the post office.
Thank you for bringing that up, Alan. And next item, Alan, it's another one of yours. It's a review of current roads and right-of-way project and other possible project. And I have. That list.
Bill,
Yeah,
if I may, before we move off of the, mission statement, um, I understand you're not gonna re-up for the committee, is that correct?
that is my mission statement, yeah.
That is your mission statement, and Rick, you're up as well,
I am.
are you going to continue?
All the applications for all the committees have been filed in a presumably timely manner and are available in the package for this week's board meeting. And that includes Alan Reinhardt.
Yeah.
And Rick Atherton.
Yeah.
I applied for another committee as well. We'll see what happens.
I didn't realize it was in
Yeah,
today's
they have the
packet.
usual list and they have each person's individual application and any amendments they had posted to it. All out there for the fun to read.
I know,
Oh, joy.
Very transparent.
I had,
It is.
I had to think about, well, do I have another 3 years left? of,
See, what
you
is
know,
this, a Joe Biden
I-
discussion?
Alan, I'm older than you and I don't think that way.
Well, I try not to think that way, but it's been a tough
It
year. It's been a
It comes
tough
up
year.
and smacks you in the face.
So anyway.
And kids, you can't tell them anything.
Well, and in weighing it back and forth, I mean, looking at all that I feel that this committee has accomplished over the years, I said, gee, you can't just sort of dispatch with it, so. But anyway, I'm sorry, Bill, in regard to this, we will need to have, election of officers, at our next meeting.
In the July meeting.
It'll be the meeting after that.
Yeah,
The
July
July
20.
meeting.
July.
Sorry, the meeting after that.
Yeah, because I did look. We meet June 17th, but the appointments are June 25th, so we don't know what the new committee will look like
Right.
until July.
No. So anyway,
So
just-
what I would suggest is at the next meeting, if you desire, that we put that on the June agenda as an agenda item.
Alan, I'd like to suggest, because I've heard more than an undercurrent, that the committee needs to be, if not reorganized, at least looked at again in terms of liaison with other town committees. And one of the people that's been saying that is Mike Burns. As a former ex officio member, maybe we could invite him to the June meeting and continue this conversation.
I would suggest you do it at the July meeting,
Okay,
because you'll have a new member.
okay.
Yeah, and Bill won't be here.
As opposed to having a lame duck that could say, yeah, that's a great idea, and
But
whatever.
just to follow the appointment protocol, there are three openings up,
Hmm.
none of which may be appointed. I'm just kidding. But there are only 2 applications. And usually when there's an opening without an application, the select board goes and really Erica through a reopening process. So we're not likely to have a new member of the committee before the reopening process occurs. We're past the deadline on applications right now, and nobody applied for Bill's seat. They didn't know it was Bill's necessarily,
No.
or however it plays out.
Rick, that makes me think to ask Bill in particular. There are some very dedicated Medicatters who might not necessarily want another committee appointment, but among you and Charlie Stott and Maureen Phillips might be able to think of somebody who is interested in Medicaid and would be willing to participate.
Yeah, I'll put it out there, but
I think that's a
And
good
actually-
idea, but it applies to all of us.
yeah.
Yeah,
The fellow that,
Pneumatic is a good spot. You know,
Yeah.
Wisconsin's a spot, there are all kinds of spots out
Right.
there to. I think it's up to any committee member, all of us,
Hmm.
to think about, you know, friends, acquaintances and so on, who would be good members of the committee.
Sure.
And sometimes if you don't reach out, they don't know, so.
Over the years, we went from initially 5 members to 7 members to the current 9 members. And that was because we did exactly what Rick was talking about. We talked to other people, people would, you know, we were very active, so, you know, we were getting things done, which is always a good thing if you're on a committee trying to get some things done. And as a result of that, people wanted to come on the committee. That's how we went from 5 to 7 to 9. So you can go the other way too, if, you know, it gets too cumbersome.
That seems to be the trend.
So I'll put up, you're talking about the projects, just so when you wanna discuss them. So these are the current project. Now, this list has not been updated since, January 16th of 24. So let me see if I can crank it up a little bit here. Utilize.
Oh, by the way, one of the other projects we did was we commissioned this book, The History of Ways on Nantucket. And it's been in demand. We totally sold out. The bookstore asked if we had any more copies of it, and we don't.
Actually, I bought one and took it down to the library. So they now have 2 that are subject to be taken up by
Right, it is available on Amazon, by the way. I bought another one just because I'd given away most of my other
It
ones.
sounds like a good committee. We could apply to the CPC for a grant to have a rerun and print off 5,000 copies or 200, whatever. Or I'm serious, and that makes sure it's available. So, and I think CPC would think that's a great project, hopefully.
You know, we did a sidewalk survey, a bunch of us
Exactly.
walked house by house, doing a 1 through 5 assessment. 1 was, it's in good shape, 5 is it didn't exist. And the town reinvented the process and decided that they weren't going to fix it house by house, they're going to fix it street by street. And that's where we got the $1 million a year for 5 years. And it's doing its job.
And again, that was a pretty major project that we to get that approved
And you want a very bad spot on sidewalks. Check Main Street, when you go by the Pacific Bank, go up to the second brick house and look at the tree.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
The tile is about that high above the sidewalks.
I asked a former DPW director, I said, if you were redoing that, what do you do? I was about to use a pronoun, and the director said, we just build up around it and we go up and over because we don't want to cut the tree down. It's the big
Yeah.
elm there. It said number 12 or number 14.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of places like that, you know, where there, it was amazing to me to participate in that, going up and down and actually writing down street number by street number, what the condition of the sidewalk was in front of that property. And up and down the street, and there was a lot of very valuable, I thought, data that the town could then use to do something about the sidewalks.
So if you want to see the normally placid Mike Burns, I think I'm being recorded, look exasperated, just say Gardner Street.
Yeah,
Oh, boy.
I know.
Alan, I'll include this list in the minutes. So that it's available. Let me just one more time put it up here in case you have a comment.
As a sidebar to the sidewalk discussion of the conditions, it often comes up in inspection reports, when someone's, you know, preparing to buy a property, doing an inspection report, they do the condition of the street. I've had to have numerous conversations that it's not the owner's house purview to fix the street in front of the house, but it does come up. And in the very old days, in fact, I put the sidewalk in front of my house on North Liberty Street. It used to be asphalt that was in terrible shape. It didn't look good either. So I actually had it jackhammered up, put it all brick. The town, I was told before I started the project that the town would give you the brick for it. In the old days, I guess
Once upon a time.
they used to do that apparently. Well, I did get one out of, I don't know, 5 or 6 pallets out of the town. I had to go out and get a truck to go out to DPW and get it. But a person bought a house down the street from me. The asphalt was in the same shape. She, being elderly, tripped over some of that asphalt, talked to the town, and lo and behold, she got a brand new brick sidewalk right in front of her house, compliments of the town.
Cheaper than litigation.
Yeah.
Well, I was-
So I wish I'd known early enough that I could have just tripped over it and gotten a brand.
Well,
sidewalk.
so I just say now, I do have a couple of those instances currently.
Yeah.
And, there are, when it's the sidewalk and it's the public sidewalk and you need to have a temporary license. And we do those. So everybody should understand, and when we get the temporary license, we get the insurance. And,
So this is a legitimate question, rather than chit chat. When I walk to vote, I go up Atlantic Avenue, which has been beautifully repaved, except for 2 trees. And the one at number 12 Atlantic Avenue, the house is a disaster, but the tree is healthy.
I spoke to that homeowner last year. I'm not gonna tell you how that went, maybe off camera.
Speaking of that,
It was under foreclosure and then it wasn't, so somebody bailed them out.
what about I know there's a click and fix, stick it out for Williams Lane.
Mhm.
Is that? I'm assuming that's got rolled over to you.
Yeah,
Is that pending discussion with the homeowners, or is the town able to go in and for the length of the sidewalk?
so which corner are you talking of, Williams?
It's,
Do you know what number it is by any chance?
if I look up. the
There's a
click and
couple
fix,
different
it
ones
goes-
for Williams,
This
but
goes, I think it's. So it's across from 2 stories house, so it goes,
yeah,
the
So-
this property used to be on the end, so.
there's one, and it's a hedge thing, sightline thing.
The hedge comes out, no, the hedge comes out and blocks the whole sidewalk.
Yeah.
You can walk from
Yeah.
Sparks down.
Yeah.
and you get about halfway down, you have to go up
So-
the street.
Bob's been working on a majority of this lately, but we're having DPW stake that whole entire section. The hedges will be tight and they will be all summer. There is one particular home that is a very elderly gentleman. And he is, I've spoken to him and he really can't attend to the hedges on his own. So the DPW will be cutting those hedges. And there's a couple others that we've had discussions with who, have just said, let them come cut them. And so we've asked the DPW to go on some regular schedule to do that, to keep them tight. And then we are dealing with them on a case by case if, there's, an anomaly in that section or anywhere for that matter.
It's right there, it's
So
5.
Yeah.
So you
Some
see,
years ago,
you're going from Sparks down to Pleasant,
Yeah,
it just comes to a grinding halt.
yeah,
some years ago, we were talking about surveying properties and developing plans. And it was suggested that the town needed an engineer. And I think 1 or 2 of our DPW, past DPW directors were licensed in Massachusetts as an engineer. Our current one is not. But we are advertising for an engineer who will be licensed within 6 months of employment, which I think is a very good move, considering the number of plans that have to be signed and sealed.
Any more on that?
I'm in three states, but not Massachusetts.
Any more on that, Alan, that you wanted to bring up?
No,
Okay, go set. Everybody else?
No.
So. Like I said, Alan, I'll put that in the minutes as an attachment, so. The mission statement and this project list will be. In the minutes coming up. On items. Other business and members' comments, couple of weeks ago, Snooki brought up. He gave us all access from the bluff back in the day when it was strictly noted on map and parcel. And if it take me a second to be able to pull this thing up. And so it was, we couldn't relate it easily to the current GIS configuration. So thankfully, Rick, while he was contemplating driving back and navigating that road of his, he took some time and he correlated the two, and I sent it out for everyone to see. And really a challenge to make it.
I was just gonna say, does everybody have their glasses?
Isn't that Jeff Carlson's 2015 report?
No, this is a Rick Atherton
Oh, okay.
combination. And the map and parcel. Rick, you want to talk about how you blended these two?
Well, what I did is I've got copies of the old map and parcel books from when I was the deputy fire chief in Wisconsin. And I took and went through that. Oh, here's the right of way here to the footpath. Here's one here. And I just wrote down Baxter Road and put between, say, 5 and 7,
Mhm.
9 and 11. That's just about the way it runs all the way down.
So then Rick, you went through and,
No, this is not the one I was putting together. I was just trying to correlate between our Baxter Road Bluff
oh,
Walk
wait a minute, I got the
Committee
wrong one.
That
That
You had
recommendation.
the stairs.
was the,
Yeah,
that was the
that's
second.
Yeah, that's what I was like. That's the
And
stairs.
the work Tracy had done separately and provided a memo to us to show the status of all those ways. And then I put Snooki's in another column just to help. And I found that Snooki's, and this is what I did, and Snooki's were interesting because when you go up north, there are a couple of lots, you look at the GIS and, oh, that looks like a way between those lots.
yeah,
Well, we ought to grab it while we can before it disappeared. I'm sort of kidding, but that was helpful. Otherwise, I didn't look at any of those lots up north. So, and then you can see, for example, 7173 is already a public way.
Mhm.
Whether it's open is a different question, but that's to be worked on. And then all the ones that Tracy has underway. There are a couple further down, as I recall. And I didn't know the names of all these roads, but they were in the original town meeting articles from what, 2010 or thereabouts. And you can't find them by name on the GIS necessarily, but they're there.
And you've got the,
And some of these easements are still being worked on, I think by Tracy and Bob, so.
and so that Bluff Walk Committee, that's from the original.
Yeah.
Back, when Deanne was second.
Yeah, that's-
It was
those were the committee
Burt Ryder and
Back in
Deanne.
2010, yeah.
that was again, another major project when we were out there looking at the roads and doing the research for it and all that sort of stuff. We never intended for it to become what it's become. And that's kind of unfortunate, because, all of a sudden the tourist people are, oh.
They're being dropped off, and I think some of that's been curtailed.
Yeah, I know.
Well, it's early days in the summer yet, but also there's a revisit to the encroachment policy there at some point as well,
Yeah.
because there still is some major encroachments on the.
I think
on the
if you
Bluff
could pull together a list of that, we would like that.
Yeah.
Bob and I have a field trip planned at some point to go out there to deal with some of the ones that I know about.
Yeah.
But, it would be helpful if we could have a list and we could do them all at once.
I would love to go out with you when you go on your field.
Well,
trip.
if you're gonna come out and do it for what, let me know and I'll meet you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I've only got 88 years in Wisconsin.
and maybe you can
You need
get,
permission slips.
and maybe we
Yeah.
can get Nat to.
You
because
gotta
he
get
used
it
to-
approved by the mayor.
That's right.
You can't create a subcommittee here, boys.
Can't talk to each other.
And
We
that's
gotta
right,
get
can't
straight
talk.
on tape. So
We already have.
Yeah.
And then Nat also used to go mow the grass. Didn't he used to have to mow the bluff path, didn't he? Wasn't that one of his early jobs?
We have reviewed the rules. Any number of us may go out on a field trip and observe, but all decisions have to be in an open meeting.
Right, and we can't discuss.
So if Ed turns to me and says, Lee, don't you think we could do something here? That might be a decision rather than an observation.
Okay, I had one other thing, Bill, and I was gonna, I wanted to call you about it and add it to the agenda, but. So I have some questions surrounding Stone Alley. I had been in the process of doing a taking. It was kind of a thing that I inherited.
Yeah.
That I don't really have the history on. And then it kind of morphed into the plan needs to be revised. We've met with the homeowners. And so we still don't have that revised plan. But then when we reached out to the surveyor, we started realizing that, there was this drainage purpose, that there had to be funding attached to that. We went down the rabbit hole. So I don't know if the purpose was a dual purpose and it was supposed to be drainage and public access, if it was supposed to be an easement taking just for the stormwater and all of that, or I just am not quite sure, and I wondered if you all know what it was supposed to
It was
be.
relatively simple. Stone Alley was on our potential takings list.
Right.
We knew it was private and we suggested to the town that it be taken. And in terms of mission, it primarily had to do with access.
Correct.
As we rolled through it, we had a presentation from Ms. Andrews, whose house is the last vehically accessible from Orange Street. Beyond her property, it's a walkway. We met with the owners of one of the abutters on
Union Street,
Union Street. And we said, well, that'd be fine.
who later sold her house, but
And,
yes.
and then the town began to realize that there were implications in terms of making it public. That then left our hands. We still very much want to make sure that the public may go down through there. And for myself, would be happy with any reasonable solution, which included the suggestion of an easement. But that would then leave the ownership to the abutters.
So
I think there's a
Ken
liability.
Ken was,
on the-
we presented to Ken at the time. And,
Yeah.
he said he looked into it, and the DPW, the report back from Ken was the DPW reviewed it and decided they didn't want to take on the task of squaring it away, which included the fallen down fences, the
I agree, it's
the
all
ivy and all
over
that stuff. And there's a bunch of dislodged cobblestones as you walk down.
Yeah,
And so we came back, and the last we heard officially was there was going to be an easement granted, and they were working, the town was working on it. Since then, the homeowner on the bottom has put a new fence in, trimmed back some of the ivy and stuff. But one of the questions we asked Ken at the time was, so if the town gets a permanent easement through there for public access, who makes sure that it stays open? He said, well, it's gonna have to be the homeowners. And the question at the time was, what if they don't? So, that was that was the last question that was asked that I know of officially from this committee to Ken, and the answer was film at 11.
But Bill, I mean, my sense of all these nuances, and I remember a lot of those conversations with Ken as well.
Mm.
But the thrust of our effort was to be able to go from Orange to Union
Mhm.
and have that guaranteed, whether it's an easement or taking, or whatever the hell it was gonna be, to have that memorialized
Mm.
as open to the public to walk forever.
Actually,
And that's, I think, the
there's
objective.
two points, because it's, to keep the driveway open from Orange down to Ginger's house,
Right.
because that's why she brought it forward, because the house in the corner was trying to restrict vehicle access.
Exactly.
So then there was a combination really of vehicle to Ginger's house and then walkway from there down to,
That's, I don't think we
Yeah, we-
objected,
no, I mean, but that just,
but.
that's why we
That's,
said it.
that's the same objective I talked about, that it's open to the public all the way, and including the vehicle access when appropriate.
What Rick is saying is correct. There was a little more nuances on Ginger's behalf. She was actually, there was a neighbor who bought the property behind their property on Orange Street that was renovating that property, and there was also some issues there that she wanted to make sure that they're. Well, first of all, she didn't like the renovation. I won't go into that detail, but besides that, there was issues about the fence on that property and the hedge and all, and actually it's between the Union Street, between that owner and Orange Street and between the Union Street side, there's quite a nice fence there now. It was surveyed. I think the town must have surveyed it, because I know they near the end at the bottom on Union Street, there was actually a surveyor out there, and I believe it was a town surveyor doing it, because I don't think the people that owned the Union Street end were doing it. And in the meantime, the sign went missing that used to mark Stone Alley, which would be a nice sign to have back, because it's like having a stone post marker. It's a sign saying, identifying that it is an alley, lets people know that, you know, there might be somewhere to walk through anyway, right? But I think that Ken always alluded to, and maybe there was also this drainage issue as well, which I wasn't totally aware of. But obviously there's a liability issue with the maintenance, and I don't think the DPW wanted to take on the maintenance of the path. Because it is a bit of a goat trail through there, but you know, still, it should have public access, and that's what we were all about, so.
Okay,
We would have to
Paid to
check
do.
on the survey, because I don't think the town has a
I
survey.
do have a we don't have a town surveyor, but we ordered a survey.
Oh, okay.
So I do have a survey.
You have.
There is a
And
survey
then,
of it, right?
yeah, I have it,
Yeah.
and then it got revised based on whatever these discussions were prior to my taking this position. And I've kind of had it, like just not a clear understanding of which way it was going, like, what is this for? And, you know, the town council has done a couple different presentations on taking by eminent domain, and, you know, it's becoming more and more difficult. It's, you know, it not only is the process time consuming, but with the appraisals and the other factors that have to go along with it, you do have to weigh the true priority of it versus sort of other places, so to speak. And so I just don't want to necessarily think that we can do it. We would have to engage. That is kind of the part of the yard sale program that made it so beautiful, because we could take it and trade for the ground cover, which
Yeah.
was valuable to a lot of people. This particular location that's not the case. Because it is
We're
sort of
talking about 3 or 4 feet.
right, and it is technically a right of way. I mean, if the public is, even though you can't label it as public access, if the public is using it and has been using it for a documented amount of time, it's a prescriptive easement. You can't take it away. They can't really say it, but the ownership is theirs.
People have rights to pass and repass,
Right,
that they build up, they're valuable and they're legal.
right. And so, you know, I think that's what you do. And so my thought was that if it wasn't for, I was just told it was gonna be for drainage purposes, but obviously at some point that fell apart and so I just wanted to bring it back up to you guys. I wanted you to know that I had been working on it, but it's sort of like wasn't sure what direction. And so we either, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily worth continuing on for sure. But I can leave it on my list.
I would suggest that it's a part of Nantucket's history and allure. It's hidden, but it's only a few yards off Main Street.
I mean, we have loads of ways that are those similar circumstances where
Yeah.
people are able to traverse through them.
Yeah, but Stone Alley is captured by the artists of the 1940s and 1950s who stood there and painted the steeple of the church, which you can't do now because there's a big tree. But anybody who goes to a local auction will see a painting or picture of Stone Alley. And I just have a sense that the town needs to, as Rick says, memorialize that access.
And that may be true. It's just, the question is, can the town do it? Or maybe that is more suited to somebody else being able to do it, to preserve it on behalf of the town. I don't know. It would be nice if the homeowners just volunteered it.
They haven't volunteered yet?
I want everybody to just volunteer.
Well, the problem with some of the owners, is that they should almost want to volunteer because could be a liability issue that would, reverberate back to them. So the other thing, I think it's like a Sconset Bluff thing, well, obviously with a different twist, is that people don't want to, as long as people can do it, they don't want to draw attention to it. And once you draw attention to it too much, the next thing you know, it becomes a very traveled way rather than a randomly.
You don't want signs on
Right.
either end or anything at all.
But-
Yeah.
It's a secret way.
But we could use the sign back that says Stone Alley. I think that's disappeared, and is that a DPW request or?
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
think so.
I mean, he was on the
Was
fence.
was it a town sign? you
It
think?
was on the fence. It looked
Yeah.
like a town
Yeah, no,
sign to
I
me.
remember it. I remember
That.
it. And that's why when you guys mentioned it, you brought it up when I was here and I brought it back to Tracy and we did this due diligence and said, where was this plan from that we were charged for revisions to that we've never seen? And so I walked it as my homework, and I said, this is great. It's wide open. It's pretty. There's new fences. The vines are all removed. I was like, it ain't broke. This is Stone Alley is
Right.
perfect, but I hear what you're saying. It
Right.
wasn't like that. And that's the risk. But we also have two homeowners there in the middle who are landlocked if somebody were to shut it down or, and I don't think their deed says you can sneak over there. They have this right, whether it's prescriptive or because it is, but there's a lot of people with interest in use of Stone Alley, including people on Stone Alley.
Right.
Who cannot get there any
They
other
don't
way.
have access to
That's
their
right,
property.
from Union or Orange.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's something that
They'd
at the
be going-
moment
They'd
is
be going
okay,
behind
but.
it to the Gardner Court.
Yeah.
That
Right.
way in.
Yeah, but you
Right.
got these
Right.
two homes,
Yeah.
that's their address.
Right.
So
They're the only ones.
please don't take it off your list. If things develop, bring it back to
Yeah.
us. If it gets worse, we would lend a comment. If it gets better, we would say congratulations.
I'm just not gonna
Right.
do a plan. I think
Yeah.
just really, I have a plan.
It's
And
on the back burner.
If
but-
it,
but
if it
it's-
comes
at the
about
moment,
again, I
it's
have
good.
something.
If another property trades it, then we can show it to the owner.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem is that, there's a survey that's done and people see their survey, but if they see someone's treated it differently over the years, or if their next door neighbor has treated it
Yeah, I
differently over
know,
the
I
years,
know.
it becomes this situation.
No, I think
where-
as time goes
where they
on,
encroach.
right, it's something that could, if it.
We
became a
don't
crisis.
want anybody to get hurt, but if they are, and they sue the town and the town says, sorry. It's this guy, you might get a change in opinion.
Say.
I know.
You talk to Ginger about
I was thinking the same thing. All right,
Everybody
this is
have
a
any
long
thoughts?
meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, and since our, and the members are on the Zoom call with Brian Eddie, so we don't have to worry about that. So, there is nothing else. The next meeting is June 17th. If you want, it'll be a hybrid. Otherwise, it won't be, but if you'd like it to be a hybrid. And then after that, you'll have to make some arrangements. If it's hybrid from July on. You'll need to talk to somebody about setting it up and running it for you, so.
Because that's some work you've been doing.
Yeah.
To help set it up, so.
So,
So if you don't show up in July and we haven't set it up, I don't know how it could be hybrid.
well, NCTV now has taken it upon themselves to help out. They're not required contractually. And so Charles came down today just to make sure that it's going. But there's nobody here to, do the weight room and change names and that stuff. So the two projects that this committee has from starting in July will be minute taking and decision on doing the Zoom stuff.
Well, there needs to be some leadership. I mean, we need to vote or. This would be at the June meeting, right?
No, July.
July.
July meeting. But we need to think about, who's gonna take over and, because as we know, it's a lot of work to keep track of all this stuff.
So anyway, that's that being said, we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Snooky, Rick, second.
Aye.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No?
Thank you.
Thank you.